My name is Beatrice from Science Center Singapore, and I will be your host for today. So what is UNTAMED, you may ask? Now, UNTAMED was born out of Science Center's ambition to redefine guest experiences amid the pandemic, leveraging a multi-dimensional approach to spark curiosity and self-learning both on the ground and online. Now, this podcast is part of UNTAMED Conversations, where we will be conversing with some very special guests about wild and wacky topics around science, technology, engineering, and math. Also, to celebrate all that is UNTAMED, we will be giving out attractive prizes worth up to $80 throughout the event. All you need to do is to share your UNTAMED challenge experience and hashtag UNTAMEDSG on your social media pages to stand a chance to win these prizes. So in today's UNTAMED conversation on glowing foods, we are very happy to have Saad and Le Yi from Fermentation Hub to share with us about how to get away with playing with food and accidentally learn something sciencey. Saad is a geek, and like most caffeine-addicted button pushers, he spends most of his time making computers do useful things. And to get away from that, he works with science people to learn new fun things to do, eat, and grow. Le Yi is an experimenter, and food is just one of the things she's trying to work with when she's not at work. She finds that sometimes you learn more when things don't go your way, and so she's trying to maximize the chances of that happening. So, hello, Saad and Le Yi.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to be here.
Hello.
This is such a fun event. There's so much fun things to talk about. To start us off, I want to tell you a little bit about the Fermentation Hub and why we do what we do. It's a little play on words. It sounds a little bit like GitHub, which is something that programmers use a lot to share code and build programs collaboratively. And the Gut Hub is, a reference to your gut, where most of your food gets digested.
Fermented sometimes.
Fermented, yes. All of the microbes in there are keeping you alive, and you're keeping the microbes alive. So the Gut Hub is a place where it all happens.
Where everything ferments together.
Yes. And
Okay.
we'll see why that's culturally important later on.
Okay. So what are we going to talk about today? That we're talking about something that's a little bit bright, right?
Yes.
Is it as bright as your future?
Well, let's hope. We're towards the end of the year, and the year has been a little bit not so bright. But looking up, I think in the future, next year is going to be much brighter. And I think what we're going to talk about later today, or just now, should shed some light on that.
So here are some of the other things that we as a group has been looking at. We have been looking at biomaterials. How do we turn things into, for example, plastics? And we've been looking into making mushrooms and making things glow, which is what we're going to mainly talk about today. Here's an example of one of the biomaterials that we've been playing with through this year, through all the circuit breaker and staying at home. And we've been playing with microbes and trying to see what are the smart things that they could possibly do. For example, solving a maze, or looking at what kind of, whether we can turn them into a fuel cell, a battery.
This is something that completely blows my mind. I mean, it's a living creature that looks disgusting and yellow, but scientists have found when they were not paying attention or paying too much attention, that if you put this creature in a petri dish that happens to be shaped like a maze, it grows towards the food and avoids the sort of traps inside the maze. And to me, that's amazing.
And we also would like to explore things such as microfluidics and see what kind of unexpected things we can find just by experimenting.
So this is something that we're also sort of like experimenting with, because Fermentation Hub is much like the culture that ferments. It's a mix of different kinds of people, and experiments are where it's all at. This is an example of the sorts of people that come and share. So you have different techniques that you don't normally find inside of a lab. We use everyday objects like webcams and things that you would find off the shelf instead of resorting to like fancy, expensive, sciencey equipment, and see if we can do some interesting things with them.
So one of the things that everyone has been really interested in making recently is sourdough bread. This is some of the examples that we have been trying to bake. And this is an example of the sourdough flatbread that has not really risen. And this is an example of us trying again until we get something that works.
This is something that was very popular in the circuit breaker period, not just in Singapore, but everywhere around the world. People suddenly grew an interest to bake bread, and sourdough seemed to be the one that sort of won out because it takes a lot of time and patience, but it's the tried and tested method. Sourdough goes back to hundreds of years. I mean, the Egyptians used to have it. There was the story of a sourdough starter that was discovered in a tomb, and then they added water to it and it started growing again.
So the amazing thing about this is that it's passed down through so many years, and it's really about things that you can make with your own hands, which you feel like you really own it, and you're really happy. You're much happier with something that you made yourself than something that you bought from the store, right?
Yes, and it helps if it's, you know, edible.
Well, so for today, we're going to look at something that you can make at home, and you can test it out with your own light, UV light. So this is something that's included in the kit if you have it. And if you don't, you should be able to find this kind of torchlights that emit UV. So you can also look at some nail lamps, or there are different kinds of sources where you can get a UV emitting kind of light. But if you don't have it, you can just enjoy this workshop as it is for now, so that when you get your hands on a UV light, then you can see what we're really talking about. So what inspired this is bioluminescence, right? Bioluminescence is when animals or plants, they emit their own light. For example, if you go to mangrove areas, you can see fireflies in the trees, and you can see tiny little greenish yellow flecks inside the trees. And that's something that really brights up some people's nights.
And this one is one of my favorites. It's a creature that is incredibly shy. I mean, he takes shyness to an extreme level. I mean, you see this little creature, it's called the bobtail squid, and it's a squid who's burying himself in the sand. He's so shy that he doesn't even want to like camouflage himself with this background. Instead, he like makes a little burrow and then puts the sand over his head so that nobody can see him. That's extreme shyness. But it goes one step further. He's got these glowing eyes, and they actually emit light. So the thing about trying to hide by painting yourself the same color as the background. So if I was wearing like a white shirt right now and standing in front of this, I would look less noticeable, but the light that's shining on me would leave a shadow behind. And so this squid is so incredibly shy that he uses the light emitting eyes to cancel out his shadow as well. So nobody can see him. But what's strange about this, and I didn't know this until I spoke to some clever scientists who knew what they were talking about, is that it doesn't actually have like light that comes out of its eyes that's part of its body. It just hosts a colony of bacteria that emit light. And it's able to control the environment in which the bacteria are so like close together so that they emit lots of light. I mean, it's not like he swallowed a torch, right? So that's not how its light is emitted. It seems to come from bacteria. So this just completely blew my mind.
And there's an example of some jellyfish. If you visit the aquarium, the sea aquarium, you'll be able to see some of these jellyfish that emit light on their own. So, well, these are wild animals that are emitting this bioluminescence. So what are some things you can do at home? So we've been looking at some of the animals that emit fluorescence on their own. For example, do you know that scorpions, they are fluorescent? If you shine a light, I mean, well, kids, please don't go and catch a scorpion on their own. But if you do see one and someone is able to shine a UV light on it, you'll be able to see that the colors are completely different from what you normally expect them to look like.
This is something that is being studied. I mean, for the longest time, we didn't realize, by we, I mean scientists, who are very easily distracted. We didn't realize that scorpions that normally look black actually glow this like bright blue color when you shine UV light on it. But it turns out that cats, and if you like cats like I do, you'll notice they do sometimes do very strange things. My cat always gets distracted by like a piece of paper or like shadow. And sometimes the cat is distracted by something that makes no sense whatsoever. It just jumps from one side of the room to the other. And it turns out it might be because they can see UV. They are able to see things that reflect or change color or emit color that we perceive by shining UV light.
And a lot of fluorescence happens on the feathers of birds. Here you can see owl has its wing open up, and you can see that there's all this red color on it. Well, the thing is, not every animal sees the same color spectrum as we humans do. Some of the animals will see spectrums like infrared, or some of them can see ultraviolet. So this is a little bit beyond the range that we can see. And that's why they can exhibit colors and patterns that we can't usually see unless we do some processing. In this case, we've shown a UV light on this owl. And as you can see, this is a myna. What can usually seem to be a very bland and not very colorful animal might look completely different in the eyes of another animal because they have the receptors in the eyes to see all this spectrum, and they can really differentiate between the different patches of color because they're able to make this see the differences in the spectrum that we can no longer see. So for example, look at this cockatiel and the egg. On the different wavelengths of light, it will appear to be different colors, or in this case, it's been visually altered so that we can see what kind of UV or infrared spectrum that they're emitting. This is a very ordinary pigeon that you can see in the streets of Singapore or pretty much any city that you go to, right?
It's a very common occurrence, and people don't normally think twice about pigeons. They're just everywhere. This particular one seems to be like, you know, showing off his stuff.
It's like a bit
Or
proud.
attitude.
It has this like interesting color on its chest. Yeah, but that comes from its feathers. But then the rest of it seems just normal and gray, right? It's not very interesting. After many generations, maybe these colors are just for them to hide in the shadows so that they don't get eaten, right?
Yeah, they just blend into the concrete like background. And
look what we have here. I can't believe it. This pigeon is actually glowing red under UV light.
That is so cool.
Yeah, because all these features are really not developed for human eyes. They're developed for the eyes of the other pigeons, so they might be using these colors to show, hey, this is who I am, these are the colors I exhibit, or this could be really made to hide from predators and everything. So because these are not meant for our eyes, they have developed it in the environment they lived in. So we have to use a bit more effort to extract this kind of colors so that we humans can see it.
So to sort of take on what we've been fascinated by with the animals and the sort of hidden depths of their colors, we wanted to try and make that a little bit more hands-on. And ideally, we will be doing this like with people so you can taste the horrible things that we're making. But what we've done is we've prepared a little sample of how to play with different kinds of foods in your own kitchen with a little bit of preparation and easy to find ingredients. You can put something together that is also, that's not only interesting to make, but also, you know, teaches you a little bit more about how light works and how food works.
So the first color we're going to look at is blue, right? This is blue.
Yeah.
You will see it. Okay, so how does this happen? And what is it made of?
The process to make this is actually quite simple. It doesn't take too much of work. Quinine is actually the ingredient that fluoresces, but you find it in tonic water. And that's something that you will find in your neighborhood shopping grocery store. So it's easy to find, and I highly encourage you to try it. The full speed version of this is just to save us the time of actually cooking it. And while I was doing this, I had much criticism because I called it cooking, but apparently it's not cooking. What is it?
It's boiling water.
Okay. It's apparently boiling water, but I consider it cooking because I can't really cook much.
So here what we've done is that we've heated up the tonic water and we have melted in some agar. So the agar is going to help us set the tonic water into a jelly so that we can make it into different shapes. In this case, we have used 3 times as much jelly as is recommended. So here, this pack is usually meant for 1 liter of water, but instead we have put this into 300 mLs of the tonic water because we find that it affects with the gelling ability of the agar powder. You could also use gelatin, and we will show you an example using gelatin later on. So here we will sieve out all the undissolved bits of agar.
Yeah, the poorly boiled, undissolved bits need some. If your cooking skills are good, you probably don't need to do it. So what I've done here is to try and make it a little bit more playful, and we've used a little stencil. This one was 3D printed, but you don't have to you can use a cookie cutter or some kind of a muffin tray and just pour it into even an ice tray. That'll do just nice.
Something like that.
Something interesting that gives you a shape that you can then play with. So this one was done as a way to try and make it an interesting art experiment, but that's the effect that we're going for. We're trying to get something that is an interesting shape, and it's kind of clear, but when you shine a light on it, it looks almost like it just suddenly got turned on, like there's light coming out of it, kind of like the animals and the jellyfish that you saw earlier. So you can make it in a jellyfish shape at home if you like. That would be fun. So I want to try and see if maybe this is noticeable on camera. It might not be. But buried inside this like fossilized jelly is a little hidden message. Can we have the
lights off?
Yeah, could we just try and turn the lights off for a second and then turn it back on again?
So you can see like this jelly just looks like one homogeneous piece of jelly.
Yeah, but if you shine a UV light on it, you can sort of make out that it's got a hidden message.
I think the camera's not picking it up.
Yeah, it's not picking it up.
Okay.
Anyway, and there's a picture later on in the slides. But it's a fun way to sort of play with what we've just learned about fluorescence. So the glowy bits, you can put it inside something that doesn't glow. And so when you look at clear jelly, it just looks like an ordinary bit of jelly, but under UV light, it reveals something else about it. And you can cut it into different shapes and use different stencils. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. Yeah, the hearts are really nice. But I didn't have enough time to play with them yet.
Okay, so the next thing that we've been trying to do is to put into jelly something really green and see what colors come out when we expose it to UV light. So for the second thing that we're trying to make here, we are using spinach. First, we are boiling the water so that we can put the spinach into the water to blanch it. The purpose of blanching it in hot water is because plants have a lot of cell walls made of cellulose. So blanching it will help to break that down a little bit so that everything will be can break down more easily. Next, we are using olive oil and we're adding it to the spinach. So olive oil by itself has a little bit of fluorescent color as well, and you are able to see it if you shine it into the olive oil. Now, because we have added oil to it, we're using gelatin as a gelling agent because oil don't tend to mix that well with water unless you put something in to emulsify it. So in this case, we're using gelatin as an emulsifying agent. We're going to add it to the water, and then we're going to mix it together with our spinach oil. And as you can see here, we have some examples of the jellified. We have some examples of the jellified spinach over here. We see the video here?
Not yet, hang on.
Okay, so as you can see in the video, we are trying to melt the gelatin in the water. Generally speaking, it's okay to mix 50-50 of the water and the oil. And for around 50 grams of the water, you can add around 5 grams of the gelatin, and that should be able to solidify everything into around 100 grams of the whole jelly. So if you use agar, it's probably better if you are using something that's completely water. But for a jelly that has a little bit of oil in it, it's better to use gelatin. So here in this video, I'm trying to melt all the gelatin into the water, and then afterwards I will mix both of them together. So afterwards, gelatin will take around at least 1 whole day to set, whereas in case of agar, it will take maybe 20 minutes to set. It's a much faster process. So if you want to make the jelly with gelatin, you have to plan ahead so that you can have the gelatin jelly in time. So now I have been mixing it together, mixing the oil and the water together with the gelatin inside. And after waiting for, well, quite a while, this is the jelly that we have seen. This is the jelly we get. It's quite a flat piece of jelly because there's not that much gelatin that we start with. Yep. So can you guys guess what color it becomes? It's red. Let me show you.
No, that's not the same thing you just made, is it?
It is. And see? Can you see the color of this? Can you see? Can you see the red? You can see the light, the places where the light hits.
Yes.
It's red. I think it's not really showing up, but yeah, it's very, very red. So to my eyes, right, this just looks like pure red. There's no other words to describe it. It's just completely red. I think on the computer screen, it looks a bit more pinkish. You can see there's some spots of oil on top of the jelly. That's a truer representation of what I see. And really this color is like, how do I describe it? It's like the color of what you might put on yourself as a Halloween decoration if you want to pretend to be a zombie and you're covered in blood. that's the huge transformation, the things that can happen with fluorescence. What happens here is that the light from the UV has a higher energy, and when it hits the chlorophyll that we've extracted by blending spinach in oil, it actually allows the chlorophyll extracted to take the high energy UV, get excited to a high energy level, and when the energy level comes down, it emits the light. And that light happens to be a red color. And that's why what we see is extremely, extremely red. Even though under normal circumstances, your spinach is extremely green.
Bright green. You know, every time I do this little experiment, I still don't believe it. It's just unbelievable. It goes from green to red. It's sort of like the opposite of what you would expect. It's completely counterintuitive, which kind of makes me wonder, you know, what do animals actually see most of the time? What we know as green, they probably see as red or purple or brown. I don't know. I mean, it boggles the mind. But yeah, the whole contrast between green and red, I really like that. I mean, the bright green and sort of like the winey blood red is just, it's perfect for Halloween.
And of course, fluorescence doesn't just happen in the spectrum of light that we humans are able to see, but it also happens in the ultraviolet and the infrared ranges, which means that there's lots of fluorescence that could be happening that we will never be able to see it. We'll just never be able to see it.
This is cool. I think we need to spend some more time experimenting with these kinds of colors. This is what we found so far, and it's been like a lot of fun playing around with this. And I thought we could try making different shapes out of it using the sort of ice tray structure that we had. And I really liked how the sort of shape that comes out of this, and it's quite spongy, but also holds its form quite nicely. So I thought, you know, we could make this an edible form of Lego. You can build different structures on it, maybe even feed it to somebody else or eat it yourself.
So of course, another thing you can do is maybe mix the colors together. So here with this spinach jelly, we haven't really extracted out all the small bits of spinach, but if you filter it out and get something a bit clearer, you could probably mix it together with maybe quite a bit of the blue, and you can get different colors. And we're still trying to find something that fluoresces. So we have red fluorescence, we have blue fluorescence, we don't have green fluorescence yet. So if you find anything that fluoresces green and is still edible, do let us know. Because once you get red and you get green and you get blue, you can mix it together and make any color you like, right? So you will be able to perhaps make a painting on your plate that looks a certain way under normal light, but looks completely different once you shine a UV light on it.
And to get started with this, I had a little bit of interaction with, this is sort of like the aunties and uncles convention. So a friend of mine who wanted to do something special for her niece, and I wanted to do something special for my nephew. And so we used what we've learned to try and draw a vegan vampire on a plate. So, you know, vampires are notoriously bloodthirsty. But the nephews and nieces in this question were very not. So yeah, we came up with this fun thing to do. All you do is like take the little pieces of jelly and turn it into a nice shape. And you'll notice the green fangs there are glowing red when you shine the light on it. And because it's in the dark, it is perfectly spooky. And it helps if you add a little voice to it. And I sort of learned that the hard way.
Oh,
so the difference between, so we did this across on Zoom, right? And my friend is like in Germany, and so there's different timelines and all that. But we sort of played around with it, and she couldn't see what I was drawing, and I couldn't see what she was drawing. And then at the end we shared it, and it turns out that mine was very sad vampire, and hers was a very happy vampire. I don't know what that says.
So you can see more clearly from this angle that the green portion is actually turning red. So in this case, you didn't turn into jelly, right? You just used the spinach and oil mixture directly, right?
Yeah.
Which means that you could make like a little bit oily kind of spinach dressing, and then you could shine a light on it, it would be completely different color.
Yeah. For the other bits and pieces, like, you know, drawing the mouth and drawing the eyes, we just used barbecue sauce or anything dark. Chocolate sauce works as well, but it doesn't taste very good. So barbecue sauce and spinach kind of works. The tonic water, not so much. If you add some sugar to it, that improves the flavor. So I just wanted to sort of leave off with a couple of things that, again, I found absolutely fascinating. While looking into this, somebody pointed me to, like, have you seen flowers? Have you seen flowers? Have you seen flowers under UV light? And I was like, no. So this is what came back. And this is a bunch of flowers that are seen under UV light. And if you look at the picture without the UV, it looks like flowers, but it's now alien flowers. And it's like that for a lot of things that we take completely for granted, the things that we know and expect to see. These are all examples of rocks, like things
minerals.
Exactly, yeah. So the minerals, they shine when you shine the UV on them, but they're just boring old rocks that just happen to be lying around on the side of the road or whatnot. And they just, you know, you ignore them, and people are just annoyed by them. But if you pick one up and look at it under UV light, it might actually hold a lot of, you know, pretty patterns in them. So all in all, I think looking at things in a new light is what this is all about. But using foods as a way to play with scientific concepts, be it physical, be it chemical, be it biological, I think is the way to go forward, because, you know, after all, we are in Singapore, and Singapore is all about the food. So I strongly recommend playing with your food.
And shining a light on them.
And shining a light.
It will shine a light on the things that you didn't realize about food.
Yes, and when you turn off the light, you become delightful. It's not my favorite part. I think we questions. Questions, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Saad and Lei. We do have quite a few questions. So maybe I'll start off with this question from Sam. And Sam asks, why do things glow under UV light? Is it the chemical composition?
Yeah, it's the kind of chemicals that are available in these materials. So the way fluorescence works is, like I explained earlier, you have a beam of light that has a high energy. So for example, you have your whole visible spectrum, right? And then beyond the visible spectrum, you have infrared, and then you have ultraviolet. So infrared is a bit lower energy than most of the things that you see. And then ultraviolet is higher energy. And so ultraviolet, you know, if you go out in the sun and people are like, if you go out in the sun, you get sunburn. That's because of the ultraviolet rays, and then there's UVA, UVB, UVCs. So that's going up in the energy level. So they can be quite damaging to your skin because of the higher energy levels. And then on the other side, you have infrared. So infrared is we use that spectrum of light to find out, for example, how hot are things because of this phenomenon called black body radiation. So you might see those kind of cameras in your supermarkets, or when you're coming in the science center today, you might have to also scan your forehead so that we can tell how hot, how feverish or not you are. So this is the whole spectrum. With fluorescence, what it does is that it takes a higher energy light. For example, in our case, we use UV. It excites the molecules inside the things that we're shining the light on. And that allows these molecules to go to a higher energy state. And then when they come down in the energy state, because of that exact drop in the energy, they will emit a ray of light. And in this case, this drop in the energy corresponds to blue light. And in the case of chlorophyll, the drop in energy level corresponds to red light. So we know that because red is closer to infrared, is a lower energy, we know that the drop in energy for tonic water, quinine, is going to be a much bigger drop than in the case of chlorophyll. So it works differently from the way we normally perceive light, because the way we normally perceive light is that it's through reflection of what doesn't get absorbed. So for example, we have this packet is yellow. It's yellow because we have white light coming from the fluorescent lights here. White light is a mixture of the whole spectrum of light that we're able to see. We have red, we have yellow, we have green, we have blue, we have purple, everything. And everything gets absorbed except for the yellow, which is what we see here. Same for in this case, the chlorophyll. Everything gets absorbed by the plant so that they can make all the light into energy so that they can grow and they can make fruit and they can survive. And what they don't want is this green color, and it comes back to our eyes and we see it as green. So fluorescence is creation of light, turning a high energy source of light into a lower energy that in this case we are able to see. Whereas the normal way we see things is when the material absorbs everything except the color that is not absorbed, which we see. And for things that are clear, well, all the light just goes through it and then we can see everything. In the case of white things, all the light gets reflected off the material and we can see things as white.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So adding on to that, we have a question, two questions from Titus and from Savita. So Titus asks, does it work with leaves and other plants as well? Similar question, Savita asks, what other green vegetables which glow? So I think just now you mentioned it is a chlorophyll that makes it glow, right? So is it true that anything with chlorophyll would glow in UV light?
Yeah, I would guess so. You could use, for example, if you wanted to make it smell better, you could use pandan leaves, right? And then maybe you don't like spinach. We've used spinach this time. Maybe you want to use kangkong. But in this case, what we find is important is that you use oil, because for some reason, the chlorophyll dissolves in the oil a little bit better. So to get the full color payout, you want to use oil. So any oil will work. In this case, we've used olive oil. You have sunflower seed oil. You have peanut oil. You can use them as well. We have also tried it in water, but the color is not that obvious. It's still red, but it's really dark red. So we think that it's probably easier if you use an oil.
Okay. So adding on after the plant question, there's a question from Marcus. Will meat also fluoresce as well? And I want to add on to the question to ask, will fluorescence change when it is raw versus when it is cooked?
Oh, that's something we haven't.
This right. Is perfect thing to try. This is a very good question. With meats, I don't know if it would fluoresce, but I do know that certain types of fish, when they go bad, they develop a glow on top of their scales. Like on the surface of their scales, in between them, they start to glow a faint sort of bluish glow.
So is it from the decomposition of the fish, or is it from the microbes that grow on the fish?
Yeah, it's the microbes. You're absolutely right. So there's a colony of bacteria that forms on top, and it's almost slimy. And that colony, I mean, it depends on the type of fish. It's not all fish, but yeah, it gives off a bad smell, and that's when you know it's not something you want to buy. But in some cases, and I don't remember the exact kind of fish, but the kind of bacteria that grows actually glows, and it's a faint sort of blue, sort of ghostly kind of glow.
But then after that, can you eat it?
No.
Like, that's, oh, okay.
I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, you could probably boil it and fry it into submission.
There are different kinds of fish and meats that are eaten only after they're fermented or dried.
That's true, yes.
Maybe if you process.
It's
So
entirely
it really
possible.
depends.
The bioluminescence that I came across with this fish was not known to be edible.
So it produces something toxic in the process.
I think so, yes. Something that's not very, I mean, not necessarily toxic, but I think, it doesn't sit well. So it doesn't go down very well.
Okay, well, Marcus, you could try and use your light and shine it on meat. We have not tried it yet. Maybe you can let us know how it works.
Yeah. Something I want to try.
Does it work? Give me your arm. So far, nothing.
Not cooked yet.
Skin doesn't work yet. It's our answer.
It's cannibalistic tendencies.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus, for your question. So I have a question of my own. So this weekend and next weekend, actually, the Science Centre Singapore is displaying a very interesting exhibit downstairs where we collected millipedes from the Eagle Garden. And when we shine UV on them, the millipedes actually glow. Yeah, so similar to the scorpions, right, that you previously mentioned. So my question is, what are the benefits of fluorescence in nature? How does it benefit the animal?
The benefit is that we are not as scared of them because we can shine lights on them and they look pretty.
So the thing that used to be a creepy, crawly, and icky, now you know that probably looks pretty under certain types of light. So less scary. It's entirely possible.
So the thing is, these kind of fluorescence that develops in animals is a result of evolution. It could be a deliberate process, or it could be not really deliberate or like selected for. The thing is, right now we don't really know why they really fluoresce. It could be because it helps them escape the creatures that could possibly eat them.
But it's still not fully understood. I mean, it's a very good question for obvious reasons, but I think it's actively being researched right now. And I know of a researcher in the National University of Singapore who's trying to try different shapes and colors of UV fluorescent butterfly wings to see which ones are more attractive, which ones attract the birds more, just to see if there is a huge difference. The way these researchers go at it is just phenomenal. So she spent hours sticking artificial wings on top of mealworms with different patterns of wings. So she had to make 100 paper wings.
So mealworms are the larvae of beetles, right?
Yes, and they look kind of like butterflies. So she was sticking these artificial paper wings on top of the mealworm to make it look like a butterfly, so then the bird would come and eat it or not eat it, just to see which one was true. So I know that it's actively being researched right now, and it's relatively new. So we seem to have stumbled on the cutting edge of science.
And of course, scorpions and spiders, they probably have related or similar kind of compounds on the exoskeleton, so they also fluoresce because of that. So what color do the millipedes glow?
Green, yeah.
Green.
Yeah.
We're looking for green, but we're looking for something edible and green. Don't really think millipedes are not edible.
Are millipedes edible? That's a new question. Maybe if they're, with enough sugar.
Well, my professor used to tell me.
Insects because they're very high in protein.
Sorry, you were saying?
Millipedes are not insects, right?
Are they not?
Not insects.
Oh, sorry.
Insects have 6 legs, right?
Oh, right. And millipedes have millions.
No, they don't have millions of legs.
They just look like they have millions. Okay. Yes. I'm not a scientist, clearly.
Yes, so.
Does that answer the question? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so my professor was telling me that everything is edible at least once. So yes, maybe mimics are edible. Anyway.
I would like to see it.
For the last time.
Please let me know if you do try.
What do millipede legs taste like? Crunchy.
Okay, we have a question, technical question from Savita. So what is the ratio of agar, water, and oil? I assume this is for the spinach experiment.
Okay. So for the spinach, the ratio of, we do not use agar, we use gelatin. The ratio is 5 grams to 50 ml of water to 50 grams of the oil. Yeah, so it's probably around 50 ml as well. Oil is a little bit less dense. It's a little bit more than 50 ml, but you can just approximate there's a range where it's still tolerable. And if it doesn't really match exactly, it's still going to be fine, because some of the oil is going to not be able to incorporate into the jelly, and it will just stay on the outside. You can just pour it off or something like that. So you can something in that range should work. Of course, if you reduce the amount of oil, it would probably be even better, because you need to emulsify the oil in the water for it to be able to gellify into a jelly.
And emulsify is just to blend it really well.
Yeah, correct.
Because otherwise oil and water don't mix. But if
Yeah,
you emulsify it, then it becomes tiny little droplets of water and tiny little droplets of oil, and then they get along. At least they look like they get along. That's how I understand emulsify.
Correct. So if you're not planning to eat it, of course you could use things like soap to mix it together so you get the color, but of course soap is not edible. So in this case, we try to use something edible, which is gelatin. Konjaku or agar, they tend to not work that well as emulsifiers. So anything that's completely water or aqueous would be better when you're using this. And if you're using anything that has any bit of oil at all, try to use gelatin instead. And the ratio for gelatin, the ratio for agar is 12 grams to 1 liter of water. But in this case, we have used 12 grams for 300 ml for the tonic water, because it appears to affect the way it gels.
Yeah, I think it's because of the bubbles and the carbonation inside.
Could be many reasons, but just put more.
Yes.
In case of doubt, you can put more.
Yeah, I mean, it's not precise. I mean, this is something that you can experiment with in the kitchen. So if it turns out a little bit too wobbly, add a little bit more next time. And these things don't cost much, and they're quite affordable. Yes. So you get a few of them and then try a few batches and see what works. I mean, it depends on what you're planning to do, right? If you want to make a shape out of it, like the little Lego blocks. Says high.
Hexagon blocks.
Yes. Then you want to have something a little bit more solid.
If you want to stack them up.
Yeah.
Then you need something more solid.
Yeah.
And of course, the gelatin jelly and the agar jelly, they behave a little bit differently as well. So the agar jelly, I feel that they're a bit more firm. They're a bit more firm and solid. Whereas the gelatin jelly, gelatin itself, the melting point is, relatively close to
body temperature.
Yeah, body temperature. So it will kind of just melt. Whereas with the agar, it doesn't really melt. It's either solid or it's liquefied. Whereas with the gelatin, it kind of feels like there's a curve to it. It slowly just sags and just, melts into a flat layer. Of course, we have an example just I think I showed. This is agar as well.
Yeah, if you have it in a sheet like this, you can cut it into different shapes.
And they can put it in a face, and they can have a spinach face mask. Spinach facial.
Okay.
Yeah, we should try that on someone else.
Okay, so thank you, Savita. I hope you got your answer and maybe you can try this at home. So we have one last question, and I think this is a very nice question to end with. So we have a question from Sophie. And Sophie says, this is so cool. Does the Fermentation Hub have workshops for us to do related to some of these topics?
Yeah, this is a very, very, very good question. So we are not an organization. We're just a collection of people who are interested in trying these sorts of experiments in their kitchens. And so we develop recipes and we share them. And we try and do meetups every once in so often when we can get some time out of busy schedules doing online conferences. Then we try and come together and share recipes. I think the idea is to try and come up with something that is interesting enough for the other person to go, I want to try that. So that's how we've been operating now. We're working on finding a space, a common shared space, which is like a common kitchen or a lab. Yes, something like a cross between a lab and a kitchen. So like and
an office.
And an office, yes. Some place where we can go hang out and not have to rely on going to somebody else's houses. But I think times are a little bit tricky right now. But coming soon, we're working on a place that we're calling the Edible Makerspace.
And maybe we can hold some workshops online like this, or maybe we can hold some small groups.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to trying to set something up like that.
Yes, but what we need more than anything else is ideas. And the questions that I've got from here, I've got enough ideas in my head to try and take me away from actual meaningful work. So well done. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so we have come to the end of this talk by Sat and Lei. So thank you very much, Sat and Lei, again for joining us. Yep, and thank you everyone as well to you for tuning in. And remember to hashtag UntamedSG in your social media posts. So the names of all lucky winners will be posted on our Untamed Facebook page. So do keep a lookout for that. And with that, thank you. And remember, when it comes to STEM, nothing is beyond boundaries. Bye-bye.